I'm Lyra, 24, female, and my family just learned a very hard lesson in emotional and financial currency. They discovered that their free ride was over while stranded on a 6-lane highway with an empty gas tank, all because it was suddenly no longer practical for me to be part of the family. The irony was, the very concept of practicality they tried to use against me was the one I had single-handedly provided for them for years. The beginning of the end started with a phone call 2 weeks ago. My mother, Rowena, had a certain tone she used when she was about to deliver a decision disguised as a discussion. It was a breezy, almost cheerful pitch, as if she were commenting on the weather and not systematically dismantling a small piece of my heart. Lyra, darling, she began, the word darling a weaponized endearment she deployed to soften a blow. I'm just calling about the summer trip. We've been doing some planning. My stomach did a familiar slow motion flip. The annual family vacation was a complicated tradition. For most of my childhood, it was the one time of year I felt like we were a real, cohesive unit. But as my brother Kaylin and I grew older, its dynamics had shifted. Once he married Chloe and had their 2 children, Sophie and Noah, the trips became a showcase for their perfect little family, with my parents as the doting grandparents. I, the single, career-focused daughter, became an awkward appendage. Oh, great, I said, trying to inject a genuine enthusiasm I didn't feel. Where are we thinking of this year? The mountains, maybe. Well, that's the thing, sweetie, Rowena said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. It's all become so complicated with the kids, the car seats, the luggage. Kaylin had to book a larger rental SUV, and the space is still just so tight. I waited, my fingers tightening around my phone. I knew what was coming. I had heard variations of this speech before. My presence was an inconvenience that needed to be managed, a problem that needed a practical solution. We ran the numbers, she continued, as if discussing a corporate merger. And with the cost of the rental and the lodging, it's just not practical to bring you this year. It adds a whole other layer of expense and logistics that we just can't manage. I'm so sorry, darling, we'll make it up to you. It's just not practical. The words hung in the air, cold and sharp. I wasn't a daughter, I was a line item on a budget, an impractical expense that had been cut. My heart ached with a dull, chronic pain I knew all too well. It was the same pain I'd felt my entire life. Oh, I said, my voice small. Okay, Mom, I understand. No worries, you guys have fun. I was an expert at this, at swallowing my disappointment and making it easy for them. My compliance was the grease that kept the family machine running smoothly. You're such a good sport, Lyra. I knew you'd understand, she said, relieved. The conversation quickly ended, and I was left staring at the wall of my apartment, the silence amplifying the echo of her words. This was not a new feeling. It was a ghost that had haunted me since childhood. I remembered my 10th birthday with a clarity that still felt raw. I had spent weeks planning it. It was going to be a pool party at the community center. I had hand-drawn the invitations with wobbly dolphins and palm trees. My mother had promised me a big ice cream cake, the kind with the crunchy chocolate bits in the middle. The day of the party, as my friends were about to arrive, the phone rang. It was Mom calling from her car. Lyra, sweetie, change of plans, she'd said, her voice frantic with an energy that was never present for my events. Kaylan's travel baseball team just made it to the regional semifinals. It's a huge deal, we have to go support him. Your father and I are coming to pick you up now. We'll have to call your friends and cancel. But Mom, it's my party, I had whispered, tears already blurring my vision. The cake is in the fridge, everyone is coming. Don't be selfish, Lyra, she'd snapped, the false sweetness gone in an instant. This is important for your brother. Family supports family. We'll celebrate your birthday next week. They never did. I spent my 10th birthday sitting on a hard metal bleacher 3 towns over watching my 9-year-old brother play a baseball game. I remember the hot sun beating down on me, the smell of hot dogs, and the image of the ice cream cake I'd so desperately wanted, probably melting under the dim light of our refrigerator back home. I learned then that family supports family meant Lyra supports Kaylan. It was a one-way street. The pattern solidified as we got older. When I was a senior in high school, I received an email that changed my life. I had been awarded a full academic scholarship to a prestigious university. I felt like I was floating. I ran into the living room, waving my phone. Mom, Dad, I got it, the chancel. Laura's scholarship, it's a full ride. My father, Thuron, a man whose defining characteristic was his passivity, looked up from his newspaper. Good job, kiddo, he murmured before his eyes returned to the page. My mother was busy sorting mail on the dining room table. That's nice, dear, she said without making eye contact. Could you grab the recycling on your way out? It's overflowing. A week later, Kalen, who was in his first year of college, came home for the weekend. He worked part-time at a local electronics store. He walked in and casually tossed a small, cheap-looking plaque on the coffee table. It was made of plastic wood grain and had a little gold plate. It read, Kalen, Salesman of the Month. My mother gasped as if he'd just presented the family with a winning lottery ticket. Oh, Kalen, look at you. Thuron, did you see this? Salesman of the Month. That night, they took us to the most expensive restaurant in town to celebrate. There were toasts. My father, suddenly animated, clapped Kalen on the back and spoke at length about his son's natural talent for business and his bright future. My full-ride scholarship, the key to my entire future, was never mentioned again. Kalen's plaque, however, was framed and hung in the hallway. The ultimate proof of my secondary status came just last year at my parents' 30th anniversary party. It was to be a grand affair, and my mother had decreed that both her children would contribute. Kaylin, who had a family and a mortgage, was tasked with creating a photo slideshow. I, the single daughter with a well-paying job in cybersecurity, was asked to contribute $1,000 for the venue rental. I paid it without complaint, but my contribution didn't end there. I became the de facto event planner. I was the one who designed and sent the invitations, who managed the online RSVPs, who spent hours on the phone confirming details with the caterer and the DJ. You're just so good at this tech stuff, Lyra, my mother would say, a phrase that always meant, you do the work I don't want to do. The night of the party was a blur of service. Lyra, can you check on the cake? Lyra, Aunt Carol needs a chair. Lyra, your little cousin spilled juice, can you handle it? While Kaylin's slideshow played on a giant screen, showcasing a lifetime of happy family moments, I was in the kitchen with the catering staff, making sure the champagne flutes for the main toast were ready. Later, when the photographer was gathering everyone for the big family portraits, I was hunting down my mother's purse. The next week, she posted the professional photos online, album after album of smiling faces. My parents, Kaylin, Chloe, their kids, the perfect family. I wasn't in a single one. I had financed the party, planned the party, and worked the party. But when it came time to document the memory, I simply wasn't there. I had been practically erased. So when she called to tell me it wasn't practical to bring me on this year's vacation, I understood perfectly. It wasn't about the cost or the logistics. It was about the optics. I didn't fit the picture. I accepted it with practiced grace, the good and understanding daughter. But this time, something inside me, something deep and dormant, finally began to fracture. The week following that phone call was quiet. I submerged myself in work, finding a strange comfort in the logic and order of my job. As a cybersecurity analyst, I spent my days building digital fortresses, identifying vulnerabilities, and neutralizing threats. My professional life was a world of control and consequence, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos of my family life. I tried to push the vacation out of my mind, picturing my family in some budget-friendly, cramped hotel, convincing myself that their decision truly was, on some level, practical. I told myself it was better this way, that I was saving myself from another week of feeling like an outsider. But the human heart has a terrible curiosity, a masochistic need to poke at its own wounds. It was a Thursday night, a week after the call. I was curled up on my sofa, scrolling aimlessly through social media, the blue light of my phone painting my face in the dim room. That's when I saw it. It wasn't a post from my immediate family. My mother was too clever for that. It was from my cousin, Jessica, Kaylan's wife's sister. It was a group photo, bright with sun and saturated with joy. There they were, my mother, Rowena, her arms wrapped around my father, Thuron. Beside them stood Kaylan, beaming with his wife, Chloe, looking radiant. In front of them, my niece Sophie and nephew Noah were building a sandcastle, their faces smeared with chocolate ice cream. They were all tanned, all wearing expensive-looking linen outfits, all smiling with a carefree bliss that felt like a physical blow. The background wasn't a crowded public beach or a modest condo complex. It was a pristine private stretch of white sand, met by the sweeping architecture of a modern mansion. My thumb froze on the screen. I zoomed in, my heart pounding a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. It was them, and they were not on a budget vacation. Then I read the caption, and the floor fell out from under me. Soaking up the sun at the stunning Casa Serena, an absolutely unforgettable week. So glad the whole family could make it this year. The whole family. The lie was so blatant, so audacious, it stole my breath. This wasn't a sacrifice made for the sake of practicality. This was a cover-up. They hadn't just excluded me, they had actively deceived me to hide their lavish getaway. My fingers, now trembling slightly, tapped on my mother's profile. She had been careful not to post anything on her main feed, but her tagged photos were a different story. A friend of hers had tagged her in another picture. "Rowena, you look so relaxed, paradise suits you." I clicked the tag, and the carefully constructed wall of my denial crumbled into dust. It was a deluge of images, a visual diary of the perfect family vacation I was deemed too impractical to attend. There they were, laughing on the deck of a yacht, champagne flutes in hand, as the sun set over the ocean. There they were, gathered around a long wooden table being served by a private chef. There was a picture of my father, a man who supposedly needed to pinch pennies, grinning as he held up a massive lobster. There was Kalan pushing his giggling children into a shimmering infinity pool that overlooked the sea. Every photo was a testament to their lie. Every smile, every luxurious detail was a sharp, twisting knife. They hadn't rented a slightly larger SUV. They had rented a private beach palace, a yacht, a chef. The problem wasn't a lack of space or money. The problem was me. I was the inconvenient truth that would have spoiled their perfect, curated family portrait. I felt a strange, chilling calm descend over me. The hurt was still there, a deep, resonant ache, but it was being rapidly overtaken by a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This wasn't a thoughtless slight. This was a deliberate, calculated act of deception and exclusion. They had looked at my worth, my place in this family, and decided it was less than nothing. They had erased me so their picture would look better. I thought about all the years I had spent contorting myself to fit their narrative. The dutiful daughter, the problem solver, the financial contributor, the one who never complained. I had played my part so well for so long, believing that eventually my loyalty and love would be recognized. Staring at the photo of my mother, laughing without a care in the world under the warm glow of a beachfront sunset, I finally understood. It never would be. You can't earn a place at a table when the hosts have already decided you don't belong in the room. The phone felt heavy and cold in my hand. The blood was rushing in my ears, and the world narrowed to the glowing screen and the smiling faces of the people who had just told me in the most profound way imaginable that I did not matter. And in that moment of absolute clarity, the quiet, compliant Lyra, the girl who always understood, began to disappear. In her place, something new and resolute was starting to form. I sat in the dark for a long time, the glow of my phone the only light in the room. The parade of happy vacation photos played on a loop in my mind. Each smiling face felt like a personal insult, a confirmation of a truth I had spent my entire life trying to ignore. The hurt was a physical presence in the room. It sat on my chest, making it hard to breathe. But underneath the hurt, a different emotion was simmering, a cold, quiet anger. It wasn't the hot, explosive rage that flashes and then fades. It was a slow-burning, clarifying fire. It burned away the fog of excuses I had always made for them. A mom is just stressed. No, she was manipulative. Dad doesn't like conflict. No, he was a willing accomplice. Kalan doesn't realize it. No, he was willfully ignorant, happy to benefit from a system that always put him first. I thought about my role in the family. I was the fixer, the planner, the one who understood technology, the one who was good with money. And as I sat there, stewing in the truth of my exclusion, a specific memory surfaced with crystalline clarity: the creation of the shared travel wallet. It had been my idea, born out of their incompetence. 2 years ago, they had taken a road trip and returned with a shoebox full of crumpled receipts and a litany of complaints. They had argued about who paid for what, lost track of their budget, and overdrawn their debit card. Kaylan had complained it was too much work to track everything. My mother had declared it a logistical nightmare. I, the ever-practical daughter, had offered a solution. "I can set up a digital wallet for you," I'd said, eager to please. To solve their problems. "We can link a dedicated credit card and a debit account to it. You can all just tap your phone to pay for gas, food, whatever. It'll track all the expenses automatically. I can even link the national toll pass to it." They had loved the idea, or rather, they had loved the convenience. I did all the work, of course. I researched the best platforms, set up the account, applied for the credit card with a good rewards program, and linked it all to a new joint debit account. I was the sole administrator, the only one with the password and the power to change settings. I set up the app on their phones, gave them the physical card, and showed them how to use it. "Just don't forget to transfer money into the debit account for your spending," I had instructed them. I also contributed to it. Every month, I transferred $200 into the account. "For family emergencies or joint expenses," ID said. It was a way for me to feel involved, to contribute to the family's well-being. The irony was so thick I could taste it. They were using my system, my expertise, my practicality to fund the very vacation they had lied to me about. They were sunning themselves on a private beach, paid for by the seamless financial machine I had built for them. They had deemed me an impractical expense while simultaneously and unthinkingly using my resources. My anger began to solidify into a decision. It was a calm, deliberate choice that settled over me, as quiet and final as a snowfall. This wasn't about a petty act of revenge. It was about consequences. It was about drawing a line so clear and bright that even they in their self-absorbed world could not fail to see it. It was about reclaiming the power and agency they had systematically stripped from me for 24 years. My body moved with a newfound purpose. I walked over to my desk and opened my laptop. The familiar hum of the machine was comforting. This was my territory. I spent my days protecting complex systems from intrusion and attack. Now I was going to perform a controlled demolition of a system I had created. I navigated to the admin portal for the shared travel wallet. I typed in my username and password, my fingers moving with practiced speed. The dashboard loaded, displaying a pie chart of their recent spending. It was all there, a digital record of their deceit. I clicked on the list of recent transactions. My eyes scanned the list, each entry a small betrayal. Transaction $524.50, Ocean View Seafood Emporium. A transaction $800, Sunset Dreams Yacht Rental. A transaction $355.99, Designer Sunglasses Hut. A transaction $1,200, Casa Serena Villa Final Payment. They hadn't just used the account for gas and tolls, they had used it for luxuries. And worse, I could see the balance of the linked debit account. It was nearly empty. They had been spending freely, assuming the credit card would cover the rest, a bill they likely expected me to help manage or pay off with my emergency contributions. The audacity of it was breathtaking. It was the final piece of evidence I needed. My decision wasn't just justified, it was necessary. It was an act of self-preservation. I took a deep breath. For years, I had been the silent, reliable foundation of their comfort and convenience. That foundation was about to develop a very large crack. I wasn't going to scream or cry or send them a long, wounded text message. I was going to do what I did best. I was going to shut down the system. The plan unfolded in my mind with the clean, cold logic of a line of code. There would be no emotional outbursts, no messy confrontation via text. My response would be as quiet, digital, and ruthlessly efficient as the system I had built for them. It would be an action, not a reaction. A statement, not a plea. My hands were steady as they moved across the keyboard. The faint clicking of the keys was the only sound in the apartment, a quiet drumbeat marking the end of an era. Step 1, the chargebacks. I navigated to the online portal for the credit card linked to the travel wallet. It was a high-limit card I had chosen for its robust customer service and fraud protection features. I scrolled through the recent charges, the extravagant list of their vacation indulgences, the yacht rental, the designer sunglasses, the obscenely expensive seafood dinner. I started with the largest and most flagrant charge, the $800 yacht rental. I clicked Dispute Charge. A little box popped up asking for a reason. I paused for a moment, considering the options. Fraudulent charge was the most obvious, but I selected something more precise, more personal. I chose Other and typed in the reason box. This charge was made by unauthorized users of a shared family account for a private trip, from which the primary account holder was explicitly excluded. The account was intended for practical family travel and emergency use only, not for luxury expenses on a trip. The users lied about. It was the truth. It was specific and damning. I uploaded a screenshot of my mother's email if they needed proof. No, that was too much. I would keep it simple. My statement was enough. I clicked Submit Dispute. A small green check mark appeared. Dispute initiated. One by one, I went down the list. The sunglasses, the seafood restaurant, I disputed them all using the same carefully worded explanation. With each click, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. It wasn't just about the money, it was about retracting my unwitting complicity in their deception. I was taking back my resources, my energy, my name from their lavish lie. The total amount of the chargebacks was over $1,600. It was a significant sum, enough to make the credit card company take my claims seriously, and more importantly, enough to leave a noticeable hole in their financial planning. Step 2, locking the wallet. With the credit card charges now in limbo, I returned to the main dashboard of the shared travel wallet. My mouse hovered over the administrative settings. I saw the master control panel, the digital heart of the entire operation. There was a large, invitingly simple button labeled Account Status. Next to it, the word Active was displayed in green. I clicked it. A drop-down menu appeared with several options. Change billing info, add user, and at the very bottom an option in red, freeze account. A confirmation box appeared. Are you sure you want to freeze this account? All linked cards and payment methods will be immediately deactivated. This action cannot be undone from a user's device. I stared at the screen, at the binary choice before me. For 24 years, my choice had always been to enable, to support, to understand. My role was to keep things active, running, and smooth. Now, for the first time, I was choosing to press stop. I clicked confirm. The icon on the screen immediately turned from a vibrant green to a stark, angry red. Account status, frozen, it was done. The physical card in my mother's wallet was now a useless piece of plastic. The tap-to-pay function on their phones would fail. Any attempt to use the account would be met with a swift, unequivocal rejection. Transaction declined. Step 3, deactivating the toll pass. This was the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. The detail that elevated my plan from a mere financial inconvenience to a logistical masterpiece of consequence. Their drive home would take them across 3 states, through a network of highways almost entirely managed by an automated toll system. Their transponder, linked directly to the now frozen travel wallet, was their golden ticket through every toll plaza. I opened a new tab and logged into the National Toll Pass portal. Once again, my credentials gave me immediate administrative access. I found the section for linked transponders and saw the ID number for the one registered to my family's SUV. The option was simple: deactivate. I imagined the scene with cinematic clarity. My family's large, comfortable SUV cruising down the highway, the kids asleep in the back, my parents relaxed after their week in paradise. They would approach the toll gantry at 70 miles per hour, expecting the familiar, satisfying beep that signaled their passage. Instead, there would be silence. A light on the gantry would flash not green, but a bright, accusatory red. An alarm might sound. Behind them, horns would begin to blare. The easy road home would suddenly become a maze of confusion and flashing lights. I clicked deactivate. Step 4, the final check. My work was done. I methodically logged out of each portal, clearing my browser cache and deleting the history. I went to my phone and found the admin apps for the wallet and the toll pass. I pressed down on each icon until it wiggled, then tapped the small X to delete them. A profound calm settled over me. There was no giddy rush of revenge, no nervous anxiety about the fallout. There was only a quiet, resolute peace. I had not screamed or cried or pleaded for their affection. I had simply enforced a boundary. I had introduced a consequence. I had treated their access to my resources with the same practicality with which they had treated my presence in their lives. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. The world kept moving, indifferent to the small, seismic shift that had just occurred in my life. For them, the problem wouldn't begin for another 48 hours on their drive home. But for me, the healing had already begun. All I had to do now was wait. The waiting was an exercise in stillness. I did not pace my apartment or anxiously check my phone every 5 minutes. I went about my life with a newfound sense of detached serenity. The storm had passed, and I was now in the quiet eye of the hurricane, waiting for the winds to hit the other side. Social media, the source of my initial pain, became my intelligence gathering tool. All on Saturday morning, Kaylan's wife, Chloe, posted one last picture to her story. It was a photo of their luggage lined up by the door of the magnificent beach house. The caption read, "And that's a wrap, sad to leave paradise, but excited to get home to our own beds. It's going to be a long drive." I did a quick mental calculation. It was a 12-hour drive. Factoring in stops for food and gas, they would be hitting the dense, toll-heavy interstate network in the late afternoon, right as the weekend traffic began to swell into a gridlocked crawl. Their timing was, for my purposes, impeccable. I spent the day cleaning my apartment, reading a book, and making myself a nice dinner. I was reclaiming my time, my space, my peace. But my phone lay on the kitchen counter, face up, a silent sentinel in the unfolding drama. At 5:17 p.m. it began. The screen lit up with a text from Kaylan. "Hey, the card got declined for gas. Weird, can you check it?" I read the message and placed the phone back on the counter. I took a slow sip of my tea, the first tremor. 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed again, another text from Kaylan. "Lyra, seriously, we're at a gas station and the card isn't working. Mom is freaking out. What's wrong with the account?" I pictured the scene vividly. The large SUV parked awkwardly by the pump. My mother, her face a mask of indignation, insisting the cashier run the card again. My father, Thuron, likely avoiding eye contact with everyone, wishing he could simply disappear. Kaylan, the designated fixer now that I was absent, trying to manage the situation and his mother's rising panic. I continued to read my book. At 5:45 p.m., my phone began to ring. The caller ID showed my mother's name. I let the call ring until it went to voicemail. A few seconds later, a notification for a new voicemail transcript appeared. I tapped on it. Transcript: "Lyra, this is your mother. Call me immediately. This is not funny. The travel card is broken and we are stuck hundreds of miles from home. Your father only has $20 in cash on him. We can't even buy the children a proper dinner. Call me now." Her voice, even in text form, was laced with that familiar blend of command and martyrdom. The lack of cash was a detail I found particularly satisfying. They had spent every last dollar on their luxurious fantasy, assuming their magic card, my magic card, would handle the mundane reality of the journey home. I imagined the frantic search through wallets and purses, the pathetic discovery of a single $20 bill. It probably wasn't even enough to fill a quarter of their SUV's gas tank. They were well and truly stranded. The next hour was a symphony of digital desperation. A missed call from my father, a rare event that signaled the gravity of the situation. A flurry of texts from Kaylan, each more frantic than the last. "The app isn't working either. It says the account is frozen." "Did you do this?" "Mom says she is going to call the credit card company." "Good luck with that," I thought. "The account is in my names." Lyra, please, the kids are crying, just tell me what's going on. I felt a pang of sympathy for my niece and nephew, innocent pawns in their parents' and grandparents' drama, but that sympathy was quickly overshadowed by the memory of my own childhood disappointments, the lonely birthdays and dismissed achievements. Children learn from what they see. Perhaps it was time for Sophie and Noah to see that actions have consequences. The sun had set and my apartment was dark again. The digital onslaught had paused. I pictured them having managed to put just enough gas in the tank with their $20 to press on, hoping it was all just a temporary glitch that would resolve itself. They were driving straight towards the final act, the toll plazas. At 8:32 p.m., the final text came. It was from Kaylan. 3 words in all capital letters, a beacon of pure, unadulterated panic. What happened? I knew what that meant. They had reached the tolls. They were stuck blocking traffic with no cash and a deactivated pass. They were in a gridlock of their own making, a perfect metaphor for the family itself. I picked up my phone. His message glowed on the screen, a desperate plea from a world away. I took a deep, cleansing breath. It was time to answer. I looked at Kaylan's 3-word text message, glowing with panic on my phone's screen. What happened? It was a question born of a lifetime of privilege, of never having to look behind the curtain to see how the magic trick worked. He had always been the star of the show. He never had to worry about the stagehands. I didn't text back. Words felt inadequate, too open to misinterpretation or argument. My response needed to be a symbol, a message delivered with the same cold, practical currency they understood so well. I opened my banking app, my fingers moved with calm precision. A select action, send money. Recipient, Kalan. Amount $1. Beneath the ammo. NT, there was a small field for a memo. Here I would use words, my words mirroring theirs. I typed the sentence that had been echoing in my mind for 2 weeks. Memo, sorry, sending more just isn't practical right now. I stared at the screen for a moment, the message perfectly centered. Then I pressed send. The app confirmed the transfer with a cheerful little chime that sounded to me like a victory bell. The effect was instantaneous. My phone, which had been quiet for a short while, erupted into a volcano of notifications. A rapid-fire series of texts from Kaylin, a jumble of question marks and exclamation points. Then calls, one after another. First Kaylin, then my mother, then my father, then Kaylin again. They were frantic, desperate for the control they had just lost. I did the single most peaceful thing I have ever done in my life. I pressed the power button on my phone, held it down, and turned the device off. I placed the dark, silent rectangle on my nightstand and went to bed. I slept more soundly than I had in years. The in-person confrontation came the following evening. I didn't know how they managed to get home. A pricey taxi, a long-suffering relative, it didn't matter. But at 7 o'clock, a hard, insistent knock rattled my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. It was them. My mother, Rowena, stood in front, her face a thundercloud of fury. My father, Thuron, hovered behind her looking exhausted and defeated. And Kaelan stood to the side, his expression a confusing mix of anger and genuine hurt. I took a deep breath, undid the chain, and opened the door. I didn't invite them in. I stood in the doorway, creating a physical barrier. How dare you? Rowena hissed, her voice low and venomous. She didn't even wait for a greeting. Do you have any idea what you did to us? We were stranded on the side of a highway. With children, we were treated like criminals at the toll plaza. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. For my entire life, this tone had been my cue to shrink, to apologize, to absorb her anger and make it go away. But the person who used to do that was gone. Humiliating, I replied, my voice dangerously calm. That sounds impractical. The use of her own words stopped her cold. She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape for a split second. It was all the opening I needed. I know about the beach house, Mom, I said, my voice clear and steady. I know about the yacht, I know about the private chef, I know that you lied to me. Kaelan's head snapped towards his mother. What is she talking about? You told me Lyra couldn't get the time off work. Stay out of this, Kaylin, Rowena snapped, but her authority was already crumbling. No, I said, looking directly at my brother. He should be in this, you all should. For years, I have been the family's ATM, their tech support, their event planner, and their emotional punching bag. I paid for an anniversary party I wasn't even photographed at. I celebrated your Salesman of the Month plaque after my full ride scholarship was ignored. I had my 10th birthday party canceled for one of your baseball games. I ticked off each grievance like an auditor reviewing a fraudulent account. The memories, once sources of private pain, were now my evidence. I was always the practical one, I continued, my gaze sweeping over all three of them. I was the one who was always understanding. So when Mom told me it wasn't practical for me to come on this year's trip, I understood. I thought you were in some cramped motel pinching pennies, but you were living in luxury and sending me the bill. You didn't just exclude me, you lied about it, you used me. My mother scoffed, attempting to regain control. You are being so dramatic and selfish, it was just a vacation. It was never just a vacation, I said, my voice dropping. It was a pattern and it's over. The travel wallet is permanently closed, the credit card has been canceled, the toll pass is deactivated, my contributions to your lifestyle have officially ended. My father, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke. Lyra, he mumbled, looking at the floor, your mother was just trying to have a nice time. And her nice time required my absence and my money, I countered. That's not a nice time, that's a betrayal. I looked at Kalan. He was pale, the pieces visibly clicking into place in his mind. He looked from me to our mother and back again. For the first time, I saw the golden child's shine begin to tarnish with the ugly truth. I didn't know, he stammered. I know, I said, and my voice softened for a moment. That's the problem, Kaylin. You never knew because you never looked, you never had to, but I'm not angry at you for that, I'm just done. I stepped back and put my hand on the door. I think you should all leave. Rowena looked like she wanted to say more, to unleash another torrent of rage, but there was no Gru. Indy left for her to stand on. She was standing on the rubble of her own lies. Without another word, she turned, her shoulders stiff with wounded pride, and marched away. My father gave me one last, pleading look before shuffling after her. Kaelan remained for a second, his eyes filled with a dawning horror and regret. Lyra, he started, but he didn't know how to finish. Goodbye, Kaelan, I said softly and closed the door, finally shutting out the noise that had dominated my life for so long. The silence in my apartment after they left was absolute. It was a deep, profound quiet that felt entirely different from loneliness. It was the sound of peace. The storm had broken, and I was left standing in the calm aftermath, not unscathed but whole. In the days that followed, I waited for the other shoe to drop. An angry email, a campaign of calls from extended family members recruited by my mother. But nothing came. It seemed my final, unequivocal stand had been so outside their expectations of me that it had stunned them into silence. The true sign of change came a week later in the form of a tentative text message from Kalan. Can we talk, just you and me? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to maintain the clean break to protect my newfound peace at all costs. But another part, a smaller, more hopeful part, recognized the shift in his tone. This wasn't the panicked demand from the side of the highway. This was a request. I agreed to meet him for coffee. He looked different when he walked into the cafe. The easy, confident swagger of the golden child was gone. He looked tired and humbled. I am so sorry, Lyra, he said before I'd even sat down. I had no idea. I guess I knew Mom favored me, but I never saw the whole picture, the extent of it, the lies. He told me that the drive home after they finally got a tow truck and a rental car the next day was hellish. My mother's anger had curdled into a bitter, defensive silence. My father had stared out the window. For the first time, Kaelan said there was no easy scapegoat, no dramatic Lyra to blame. There was only the uncomfortable truth of what they had done. When you sent that dollar, he said, shaking his head with a grim smile, it was like a light switch flipped on. I finally understood. She used the word practical on you, her own daughter, to justify a lie. There's no coming back from that. It was the first time in my life that my brother had ever truly seen my side of the story. He didn't make excuses for them. He owned his own ignorance. He asked me genuinely, "What can I do?" For now, I said, "Just this, just talking, understanding. I can't go back to the way things were, Kaylin, I won't." "I don't want you to," he replied, meeting my eyes. "I wouldn't respect you if you did." That coffee was the beginning of something new. A fragile, tentative relationship with my brother built not on shared history, but on a new, shared understanding. We started talking, just the two of us, separate from the gravitational pull of our parents' toxic dynamic. As for my parents, I maintained my distance. I knew that for any real healing to happen, they would need to undertake a journey of self-reflection that I wasn't sure they were capable of. That was their path to walk, not mine. My path was leading somewhere else entirely. A month after the incident, I sat down at my laptop, the same one I had used to dismantle their financial world. I opened a travel website. I thought about all the money I had poured into the shared travel wallet over the years, the emergency funds that had become luxury funds. I thought about the $1,000 I'd given for the anniversary party. I took all of that, the sum of my misplaced financial loyalty, and I booked a trip. It was a trip for one. A 2-week tour of a country I had always dreamed of seeing, a place of ancient mountains and vibrant cities. It was a trip that was completely and utterly impractical, and it was all for me. As I sit here now, writing this from a small cafe overlooking a landscape I only ever saw in pictures, I feel a sense of profound peace. The pain of my family's betrayal hasn't vanished entirely. It's a scar, a reminder of a wound that was inflicted over many years, but it no longer defines me. I am not the family fixer, the convenient daughter, or the practical expense anymore. I am Lyra, a 24-year-old woman who is strong, independent, and worthy of respect. My family taught me what it feels like to be excluded, but in doing so, they gave me the greatest gift of all, the courage to finally choose myself. I locked a wallet, reversed some charges, and froze a pass. But what I really did was open the door to my own life, and I'm finally walking through it.